we go. Perfect. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to tonight's event. My name is Maria. I lead our brand communications here at M.M.LaFleur, and I'm so excited to join everyone from the M.M.LaFleur community, as well as from the book club and Belletrist communities. Tonight's event is actually a part of a series we've been hosting called Inside Time, which is all about bringing together the communities we have and the communities of our partners over the winter, even if you're in sunny LA, and we're all jealous. So if anyone is new to MM, I'll give you just a very quick intro. We are a women's wear brand built on the core belief that when women succeed, the world becomes a better place. And we have the thoughtfully designed clothing, styling, and community for any woman who wants to feel empowered by her wardrobe without spending hours getting ready. And our partners this evening are Book Club and Belletrist. A little about them. Book Club is a vibrant community platform that connects readers with authors and each other. Book lovers around the world can join a variety of video and audio book clubs led by authors and curated by influencers, engage in lively conversations with fellow readers and authors, explore an ever-growing library of titles, and more. Belletrist, which was co-founded by Emma Roberts and Karah Preiss, who are both avid readers, is a community for the curious that celebrates great books, the authors who write them, and the people who so lovingly read them. After years of mailing books from Karah in New York to Emma in Los Angeles and back, they channeled their hobby into a vibrant book club online in 2017. And last year, Belletrist partnered with Book Club to bring their monthly literary picks to life in a whole new way. Through exclusive video content, virtual author events, and behind the scenes access, you can join Emma and Karah as they dive deep with the author of the Book Club monthly book pick to learn more about each story and its characters, the intricacies of the writing process, and how each book came to life. Welcome, welcome. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our wonderful panelists, and then I will take myself off spotlight because you don't need to hear from me anymore. So first up, I'm going to introduce Karah, our moderator. Karah Preiss is an experienced producer and writer based in New York City. Along with actress Emma Roberts, she founded Belletrist that we just talked about. And Belletrist is recently turned into a film and TV producing vehicle called Belletrist Productions as well. Through Belletrist, Karah and Emma are on a mission to promote reading as an accessible and unique form of self-care. Prior to founding Belletrist, Karah was an independent producer and a science and tech reporter at the Huffington Post, where she hosted the short form series Talk Nerdy to Me. In her spare time, Karah hosts the award-winning iHeartRadio podcast, Sleepwalkers, which focuses on the ways artificial intelligence is affecting humanity. Welcome, Karah. Next up, I will welcome Jean. Jean Chen Ho is a doctoral candidate in creative writing and literature at the University of Southern California, where she is a Dornsife Fellow in Fiction. She is an MFA from the University of Nevada, and her writing has been published in the Georgia Review, GQ, Harper's Bazaar, Guernica, The Rumpus, Apogee, McSweeney's Internet Tendency, and others. Her first novel, Fiona Jane, was released on January 4th, and it is the Belletrist and Book Club January book pick. Jean was born in Taiwan, grew up in Southern California, and as we have all discussed, lives in LA. Welcome, welcome, Jean. And next up, I will introduce Uli Beutter Cohen. Uli is a New York City-based documentarian, artist, and creator of Subway Book Review. She explores belonging to a time and a place through writing and photography. Uli is a sought-after speaker and panelist, and her work has been featured in print, on TV, and online by New York Magazine, Esquire, Vogue, Forbes, The Oprah Magazine, Glamour, the BBC, and The Guardian, among others. Reading the names aloud for both Jean and Uli, where you've been published, is incredible. Uli's first book, Between the Lines, Stories from the Underground, was published this past October, and Uli lives in Brooklyn. So I am going to pass it to Karah As in terms of the format for this event, we would love for everyone to be dropping comments and questions in the chat. We will have a dedicated Q&A time at the end, but certainly we'll be, get into this chat. We will be taking your questions. And I definitely just want to note that, as we mentioned, there is a special giveaway courtesy of our partner Libro.fm, which will be 3 audiobook copies of Fiona and Jane to be announced at the end. That's it for me. Karah, I will pass to you. Remove the spotlight.
Thank you so much, Maria. And thank you for, as the kids say, these wonderful threads.
Yeah.
Are you you are all wearing M.M.LaFleur.
Yes. I'm wearing an M.M.LaFleur top and also these fabulous statement earrings.
Oh my God, those are beautiful.
Which
I didn't know they
feel
had earrings.
Listen, I mean, I looked at the site and I hinted to Maria that I was into accessories, especially in this Zoom era. So I got hooked up. Sorry.
You got to know what to ask for is the thing. And you are in this wonderful turtleneck and I'm in this.
I'm turtling because it's called MF in AF in Brooklyn. So
it's
you know,
called M.M.LaFleur.
It's called M.M.LaFleur, and I am here. I'm in it. I'm excited by it. Please do drop the style.
Yeah, drop the styles.
Very comfortable. It's a very comfortable and chic affair.
I have to say, one of the things that excites me the most about this partnership is, maybe you guys disagree, but it isn't every day that a literary event sends you clothing to wear. That's more of a Hollywood thing. And so this is very exciting, at least for me, to receive clothing in the mail to wear.
It's very exciting for me too. And I feel like Maria gave us things that were like very weather appropriate. Like I got this cute little mock sleeveless sweater that I just love, and it's perfect for the weather right now.
I mean, I might have to get are those real earrings or are they like clip-on earrings?
They're real earrings. Yeah.
Yes, so I might have to get, I still don't have my ears pierced, but that's for another time. Not today. All right. So I'm extremely excited to be here with both of you who I now know and have met in person, which is kind of, Uli I've known for a long time. And I got to meet Jean because we did an incredible day of interviews, etc. And I don't know if any, I hope people on here subscribe to Belletrist on Book Club, so you can actually see these videos that we made together. I don't know. It feels, I don't know what time is anymore, but these wonderful videos. And I wanted to start with a sort of, I don't know, maybe an annoying question, but one that I think is important because both of you released books in the last calendar year. What's that been like? And you guys can choose who goes first. Uli, go first. I chose.
I'll go first. Here's the honest answer. Releasing anything during the pandemic is a chore, a journey, and something that will make your core stronger if you're lucky. It may also attempt to bring you to your knees. And I just want to say that as a general statement, because not even for launching a book, which is a whole other thing, and I have thoughts on that we can get into, because I think what happened is that in 2020, we all bought books like crazy. Like we went into a book buying frenzy in 2020. Our shelves were bursting at the seams. We couldn't get those hot little titles fast enough. And then what I think happened in 2021, not just with books, but with everything, is that a lot of people really shut down because they were like, again, we're in this another year. We're still here in this together. Where are our leaders helping us out of this? Yelling into the void, no one's answering back. And I feel like in 2021, there was a real collective moment, and I think it's still ongoing. And I say this honestly because I'm an honest person. I think we are exhausted and I think we're trying our best, but I also totally see this in other authors, in myself. I went really, really hard with the release of My Girl because you know what? This is 7 years of work and I wasn't about to let that go flat. But did it take everything that I had? Absolutely. 100%.
Wow. I mean, that's a hard, thank you for that amazing opening. My book has only been out for 3 weeks. It came out on January 4th. So I feel like I got to see lots of authors in 2020 and 21 go through this insane period of transitioning from real life events to Zoom. And so for me, you know, we started planning for publicity and marketing and stuff for my book probably starting like 6 months ago. And I think seeing how everything has gone on in the last couple of years, my team was sort of like, we're going to plan as much as we can, knowing that things might get canceled. And a couple of things did get canceled. And then most of my events now are virtual. So, you know, we're planning for live events maybe in March and April. But, you know, for me, I kind of feel like I'm so glad to have a book in the world, period, that I'm just so grateful to have this opportunity. And, you know, in some ways doing stuff virtually is fun too, because you get to reach more people that wouldn't otherwise be able to attend a real life event. So, you know, I just got to roll with the punches.
I think that's a very good point, just generally in terms of like community gathering around reading and talking about books is like, I someone who's lived in New York my whole life, I sort of take for granted that I can always, there's always an event every night, you know, there's always something that you can do. And I don't, you know, that isn't the case everywhere else. And I think the one amazing thing, or one of the amazing things about Zoom and all these other, you know, teleconferencing things is like, you can be in touch with anybody who wants to talk to you about something. I mean, it's kind of incredible. And I think, you know, for writers who having spoken to a lot of them are often isolated from their readers, right? Or don't always get to talk to all their readers. It is similarly with Instagram. It's this very cool thing where you can actually be interacting in real time with the people who are reading these things that you wrote in a vacuum and like hoped would make it out into the world. So it is, I do think there are potentially some upsides in that way. I realized we didn't really do this in your introductions. And I was wondering, you know, because I'm not sure the sort of makeup of people in here, but if each of you could kind of just talk a little bit more generally about your book. You know, these are very different books. And, you know, I think just a general kind of synopsis, and then Uli, for you, sort of just your sort of background and how you came to create this work would be awesome to hear.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm seeing some amazing questions in that chat, by the way. I love that you're using the chat. I love that you're dropping in there, because we're really here, you know, as a community, and we're here in discourse, and we're having a conversation. And for all of you to show up today, clearly you have questions for us, or you know, you're interested in particular things. So let us know what we can answer for you. And thank you for everyone for putting your questions in here. And also for putting where you are located. If you haven't done that yet, please do, because for me, that's great to know. I'm obviously someone who documents people and what they're reading, but to me, what I'm really doing with that, and I have been doing this work, like I said, for 7 years, 8 years as of this year, actually, which is crazy, on the subway in New York City. But what I'm really doing with that work is I'm capturing a snapshot of the state of mind of the person, of their identity. I meet them where they are. Most of my work is centered on listening. I know I'm chatty, trust me, I get these people talking, but really what it is about is to be a very good observer and a very good listener, and to let someone tell their story on their own terms. So that's what I have done here. You know, you have icons in the book, but most of them are really just phenomenal New Yorkers who also wear very cool clothing, of course. I mean, you have to represent, but who share with me what's on their mind, what questions they have. And as the phenomenal writer Min Jin Lee said to me, the reason that she loves this project, and she's in the book, so that's why I'm bringing her up, is that there's, of course, no question that a book can't answer. And that's really what I have collected here, is I've collected our questions, our collective questions that we want answers to. And I wanted to provide us a idea and a inspirational source to to visit and to read so that we can think about our future collectively in a new way. That's what I wanted to do here. And how I work is very much like a street photographer, but with, instead of cool shoes, I look for cool covers. I look for people and I observe kind of how they're interacting with their book. I don't do Kindles. Sorry, I don't do screens. They don't photograph well. I only do printed books because that really lets you in on, the kind of day the person's having. Are they concerned? Are they happy? Are they having a bad day? Which sometimes those conversations can turn out to be amazing. So does that answer your question, Karah? Did I do that?
Totally. And I was just going to plug another thing that I know book readers, the sort of holy grail of being a reader is a good recommendation. And your book is a collection of incredible book recommendations also. So, and very curated ones by very, very, very interesting people. So I just, if you're someone who's looking for good book recommendations, that is also an added benefit of Uli's book.
Thank you for that. I mean, there's a whole section, that I snappily called all the people, all the books. So yes,
there you go.
Let that list grow 100%.
I love this book. I mean, I've been a huge fan of your Instagram account, Uli, but what's great about the book is that you get extended interviews with your subjects and you get into such great conversations. And I love that you split it up into different sort of segments in the book, from arrivals to trees to matriarchs. So it's quite lovely.
Thank you.
I'm the author of Fiona and Jane. I don't know if you can see this because of the light.
Yes.
But this is my first book. It's a story collection. It's a linked story collection about two Taiwanese American women who are best friends. They grew up together. They've known each other since the second grade. And the book spans over 20 years of this long friendship when they drift in and out of each other's lives. And it explores identity, sexuality, career failures, heartbreak, romance, and everything in between that the two women, have the guts to go through and discuss with one another. So it took me about 5 years to write this book, and I'm so excited that it's actually out in the world as of this month.
That's the other thing. I mean, the amount of time that it takes to write a book versus make a television show or make a movie or create a collection, not those things are all very difficult. Absolutely. But the amount of time that it takes to write a book and the amount of people that it takes to sit down and write it. Of course, there's a ton of people involved, obviously, in the process, but it can be very solitary and it can take a lot of time. And so I have a tremendous amount of admiration for both of you. I just really quickly want to, because this stuff is like the full body chill stuff, when I just see how many people are from different places and we're all sort of converged here together. We have Elle Watkins in Dallas. We have Jessica Weinstein in Palm Beach, Florida. We have Chandra Grant in Northern Cal. We have Kristen on the Upper West Side, South Florida, Cece in Central Pennsylvania, Cindy in Seattle, Anne in Milwaukee. We have someone in Quito, Ecuador. We have someone in Chile, in Chile, in Portland, Oregon, in Washington, D.C. So it's just, it's really awesome. And
Wow.
I appreciate everybody, on your various time zones, taking the time to come in here and listen. And thank you. I already see some, and Marin, beautiful Marin. I see some questions coming in. And one of the things that I was saying early before we started this is like, I can't possibly ask the questions that are on your minds, and Q&As often get cut short. So please put your questions in. And I already see some wonderful ones that I'm going to ask very soon, but I wanted to ask a question. I wanted to mention something that's in Fiona and Jane that I kind of just wanted to discuss with the two of you, because I'm curious about what you think about this. But there's something that when I was reading Fiona and Jane, it elicited this idea of how do other people talk about me? How do my friends think about me? How would they write about me? Not in a narcissistic way, but because Fiona and Jane toggles POV, and because these are two accounts of a friendship, it made me think about sort of where am I in other people's stories? And my question, I don't know. I wanted to ask you, Jean, if you have thought about that at all. And then I wanted, Uli, I was curious about sort of how you, I don't know, sort of how you think about yourself in the fabric of New York City and the story of New York City. And you know, if you sort of made a concentrated effort to be a part of the fabric of New York City and the story of New York City, or if it's just something that you kind of fell upon. But I kind of wanted to raise this general question about like ourselves in the narrative and how we fit ourselves into stories, because I think that also goes into another question that somebody asked that I will ask after. So Jean, if you have any thoughts about this, it really was one of the things that I found most provocative about your collection.
Oh, okay, thanks. Thank you. That's a great question. I mean, one of the hardest parts about publishing a book, and Uli, maybe you can agree or disagree with that, is that there's like tons of, like when you get a smart person reading your book and they ask you like difficult questions that you never even thought of, you know what I mean? Because talking about your book is a totally different thing than writing it. And I feel like I'm having like a total blank moment to even know how to answer that question. But I think the book spans a long friendship. So the earliest you'll see the two women, they're like teenagers, and then they grow up, and then like the last story, they're almost 40. So I think part of what I wanted to explore in terms of like, does your best friend know you, or how well do you know yourself, is I just think of when I was a teen and even into my 20s, my friendships really defined me. And I was always like trying to test myself against like, oh, would my best friend do that? How would my best friend respond in this situation if some guy ghosted her, or in this career situation? And then just like talking things out, or even just having a friend who can offer you a different point of view. I felt like that was a very seminal part of my, you know, like forming my own identity. And then as I'm getting older now, you know, trying to figure out like, well, where do I end and where does my best friend begin, right? Like, where do I have my own boundaries and like not take things personal? Like this comes out in the book, but it's something that I actually experience, is that like, as I'm like child free and married, but like many of my friends in the last 5-10 years have like married, some have divorced, you know, some have kids and all of that. But I remember when I was like around in my late 20s, early 30s, like one of my best friends was getting married, and I love her boyfriend, you know, but it was very unexpected for me to feel like, oh, she's abandoning me. Like our friendship is never going to be the same, because now she's going to have her husband who's her best friend. So it's kind of like all of those really intense, semi-unhinged questions when it comes to friendship that I wanted to explore in the book. And I'm still trying to figure it out, maybe.
That's a great response. I was just curious because I knew, yeah. Sorry, Uli, you go. You go.
What you're saying reminds me of something that I actually just read about, and I'm going to drop the link in the chat. It's from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. Maybe some people know it. I just got acquainted recently, but there's a word for what you're describing, which is sonder, which is what they have come up with, which is the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, populated with their own ambitions, friends, routine, worries, and inherited craziness. An epic story that continues invisibly around you, like an anthill sprawling deep underground with elaborate passageways to thousands of other lives that you'll never know existed, in which you might appear only once as an extra, sipping coffee in the background, as a blur of traffic passing on the highway, as a lighted window at dusk. Yes, I just did read that.
Girl, did you script? Am I in the Matrix right now? Like,
is that wild?
No, that's amazing. That's
I just spontaneously asked a question that you had the most perfect answer for.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Because we are in the Matrix, obviously. We've all taken the correct pill. And I think, but I wanted to bring up Sonder because I think, and there's also a beautiful video. Don't watch it right now. Do not leave this conversation. Watch it later, save the clip, then go to it, then watch the video for Sonder. Don't you dare leave. There's more gems to come. You want to stay here, trust me. But the thought about Sonder has been on my mind a lot in terms of right? All of us. And this hit me so much because I asked this, my mom, who's a Gemini. And if anyone else has been raised by a Gemini in any capacity, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I was like,
Jane?
Mom, yeah.
Sorry.
I was like, Mom, do you actually think that you're the main character and we're all your supporting actors? And she was like, yes, absolutely. Doesn't everybody feel that way? And I was like, no, no, that is maybe not. But then I came across Sonder and I was like, of course we all feel that way. But I mean, Geminis, you know, if you're a Gemini, that I just called you out in a very loving way because you're crazy with this. You're taking this to the next level. So, I really have been thinking about this a lot, and I thought about this as I was writing this book because, especially as a white narrator, I wanted to take myself out of the seat where I was centering myself. And I am in the book as the person asking the questions, because without me, these stories wouldn't be told. And it is quite a diverse cast of voices that are in the book. And so I'm very proud of the people who I have stumbled upon, who have found me, whose path I was meant to cross with. I think it's very, very important for all of us to really be conscious and to ask ourselves, what role am I playing in other people's life, consciously and subconsciously? When is it time for me to center myself? And when is it also time for me to step away and let someone else center themselves?
Yeah.
Wow. Let's just end the Zoom right now. I feel like that was perfect.
We can't end it. There's so much more to come. There's so much more to come.
In thinking, and that's what I thought was, it is funny because when I knew we were going to do this event, I mean, I like tying the most disparate things together, but I was like, how can we interestingly talk about Uli's book and Jean's book and tie them together? And I do think that, the simple kind of act of like organizing life, right? Like Fiona and Jane is basically, as you said in your kind of description of the book, is linked stories, which ultimately is our lives. And, I think that's what your book is too. It's linked stories from the subway. I mean, even if it's people talking about books, it's linked stories. And I also, my favorite thing about, as Min-Jin Lee said, of like every answer you need is in a book, is like, I read Fiona and Jane. I started to think a lot about just, how much friendship is the narrative arc of our lives, especially as women, I think, just because I think we have more, I shouldn't say that, but I feel like we have more language for friendship in some senses. We have more of a vocabulary for friendship. And so you guys just gave great answers. And Sonder is now, main character energy, main character energy doesn't distill exactly what you're talking about. Main character energy is like main character energy, but what we're talking about is sort of seeing the world in a way that like a passerby is, potentially just a ripple in the story of our lives. It's great. I mean, I love that. On another note, and somewhat unrelated, I guess, but
can I comment on something real quick, Karah? Because I feel like this is, I feel like this is also present in both of our books. And that is, especially in Fiona and Jane, and that is also how much women are tasked with holding shit together for the family and for the general collective. And I think I would love to hear from some people in the chat if they feel that they have been overtasked with nurturing, because I really feel that, especially as female identifying people, if you maybe just +1 in the chat, if you have ever felt overtasked with nurturing at your work, in your family, hit me with a +1. And if not, don't worry about it. Like, no pressure.
+1 from all sides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're rolling in. Here we go. Because I really, truly feel I want to talk about how we can, this is fantastic. Don't feel pressured. I'm really just honestly curious and asking, over nurturing. We're getting some +1s.
I think we have a ladder. I think we have a ladder at this point that we could climb +1s.
but let's talk about it. And I'm really curious how you two deal with over nurturing versus like doing the right amount of it, because I'm a triple water sign. I'm a Cancer, Scorpio. So I can nurture the shit out of the entire world and feel like, you know, that is my legacy in my life. And I really have to hold back. Can I cuss? I'm sorry, M.M.LaFleur. You're like, who hired this woman? She's a dirty, dirty mouth. But I just really thank you, Maria. Maria has given me permission
to cuss.
But can we talk about that?
Yeah, you know, I actually have never heard of Belletrist being described as like promoting reading as self-care. And I have actually never thought of reading as self-care. It's just like what I've been doing my whole life, and it's a pleasure. And I love that. Of course, reading is a way to self-care, and to make time for that is a way of saying, this is going to be my time to devote to me and what I like to do. But I think that's, for me, that's related to your question, Uli, about nurturing, how much to nurture others versus nurturing yourself. I think that one thing perhaps made more evident by the pandemic is that we have to really concentrate on taking care of ourselves before we can, you know, spread ourselves too thin. And I have been trying to really have, like, you know, even though we're at home all the time, I've been trying to have more time that is intentional and meaningful for me. So that's one way that I've been, I think, trying to draw those boundaries.
I think I actually said to my girlfriend today, I said, I need to go on vacation so I have time to read, which is a disturbing thing to say. But actually, Uli, you and I talked about this on this other panel that we did earlier or late, you know, I don't even know, in September, I don't know when it was, September, October, but, you know, just about this idea of stillness and, you know, making time for yourself, which is not attributed to detaching from reality or, you know, vegging out, because that is also, you know, I think that can feel like relief, but actually like servicing yourself in a way that is meaningful. And I think reading, you know, going back to the reading as a form of self-care is like a way to enforce or to reinforce to yourself that you have time that is yours. And M.M.LaFleur, you know, in terms of thinking about kind of creating clothing for work, you know, I think it's very important that, especially in this time, that we learn and are aware of delineating moment, you know, time for work and time for yourself and time for doing things that are good for you, and not being trapped in this binary of like work and then being a zombie, you know. And I think, and it's what's interesting about work clothes, and not to go off on a tangent too much, but like, I think work clothes are actually very important. I know it sounds like a late stage capitalist nightmare, but work clothes are actually extremely important because they help us tell ourselves like, this is when we're working, and then we take them off and we're like, and now we're not working anymore. And I think that there's something very powerful about that. As much as I am definitely a leisure seeker in my clothing, like I actually think it's very important to set boundaries, like in the way that you dress, because I think it helps really allow for, I don't know, important boundaries in our lives. That was a huge tangent that I just went on, but you guys, you know, made me think about these things. But yes, no, but Uli,
we love it.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, going back to what you were saying in this, and, you know, to the extent that we are expected to carry a lot of the, and I don't have children, but expected to carry a lot of the weight, whether it's in our families or in our friend groups, like that there are very few things in this world that are ours, you know, and books are really that, you know. So Cece said, I forced myself to watch this because for a long time my life has been work and being a zombie. There you go. There's the binary. And I think I think we just have to come out and say that sometimes. I mean, we get sort of in this automatic place. And, you know, you think of all these things also when reading both Fiona and Jane's subsequent stories, that like a life is made up of a lot of different forms of self-awareness, you know, and those forms of self-awareness change too. Like you think you can know yourself when you're 24, and then you're 30 and you're like, who the fuck was she? You know?
Yes, 100%. I also want to say that I learned a very important lesson around this from my pharmacist, who has a pharmacy on the corner of my block. So
a local pharmacy, I wouldn't expect anything less.
Of course you go there. You go there for your meds and you go there for a chat. So recently the chat that I came away with, this is like, it was kind of like Sonder. It was like a Matrix perfect match made in heaven. I went there to get meds, and then the pharmacist's name is Motis, and Motis will always ask me when I walk in, he's going to be like, who's number one? And then I have to say, I'm number one. And then he'll ask me, who is number one? And then I have to go, I'm number one. And then we do this back and forth. And then he's like, yes, that's right. And I'm like, yeah, I am. And then I walk out with my meds and this renewed sense of self. But it really is giving me life, because when I first did this with him, I was like, no, that is not true. Like, I take care of so many other people. So many things are more important than me. And then finally, after like the 500th time of going to the pharmacy to get my meds, now I believe it. When he's like, who's number one? I'm like, this one right here. And I really want to put that forth as a concept for this year. My mantra this year is self-worship, which to me is like, I got that from Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. If you don't follow her, don't do it now, but do it later. Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. I'll put her name in the chat. Go to her immediately. She's at Goddess on Instagram, and she is the best. She's wonderful. She's a spiritual healer. She's a psychic. She's a tarot. She's all of the things. She's a moon goddess. But she was like, why don't you make this year your year of self-worship? I was like, yeah, nurture myself first and then see what I can do for other people. So I wanted to put that forward.
You deserve it. I love that story about your pharmacist. That's amazing. Is he single? No, I'm just kidding. No, but you know what? That actually ties back to what you're saying, Karah, about the clothes and like having your clothes be a way to have boundaries and delineate. But for me, clothes is also a way to put on a costume. Like if I don't feel confident, if I don't feel like I'm number one, I can put on something that makes me think I might look like I think I'm number one, and then you sort of live into that. So that's another way that I love, you know, playing with clothes and using clothes as a way to self-care.
Well, and I was going to ask, and this is a nice segue, because both of you sort of, I think, probably think about clothing in your work in different ways, but I, for whatever reason, don't often think, unless it's described, and it is often described in novels, I don't think about a character's sense of fashion. And I'm wondering, you know, Jane, when you sit down and you're like, okay, because these are two, I think, sort of made up people, you know, people, do you think about this is how these people dress? Like before, like, how do you kind of come up with a sense of fashion for your characters?
Well, yeah, I do, because it's another way of describing the outside as a way of reflecting who they think they are and who they think they're supposed to be. And also it's like, if Fiona notices Jane is wearing a particular thing, why does she notice that and not like, you know, how does she perceive that? If Jane is noticing that Fiona is wearing like a spaghetti strap dress, that's because Jane is like, oh, that's something that I can never pull off because I'm wearing like a baggy t-shirt and shorts or something, you know? So it's a way of both letting the character express herself, but also in other scenes, letting other characters take that in and let the reader take that in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is what's so great about having different POVs within the collection. I keep wanting to say now, I meant collection.
It's fine. It's been called both. No, and then Uli, I know you said that you notice people for what they're reading, but you have some amazing outfits on the subjects in this book. And
that's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Maybe it's just New York. I feel like that's maybe just a normal way of dressing in New York, but it's pretty incredible.
I'm just pulling up some people for you because they do look fabulous, if I do say so myself. I mean, okay, so look at Samuel Maria Gomez, for example, right here. I mean, he's a dream. Everybody wants to date him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So many messages, but then more important is what he says. And he says, what's not to admire about women? I think one of the coolest things about women is their ability to channel masculine and feminine energy. I do that all the time. A woman can wear a red dress with heels and command the attention of a room, or she can throw on sweatpants and garden some flowers. I want to bring that ability into my own life. Right now, I'm actually wearing a pair of women's jeans. I found them at a shop that was closing, and it's all they had left. They were $1. So what was I supposed to do? I got them tailored at the waist and they fit pretty nicely. I've been rocking them all summer. And I was just like, yeah, that's what we need. That's what I want my future to look like, where Samuel can wear a pair of women's jeans, because why should we only be wearing boyfriend jeans? It can go both ways, you know? And I think I find that all the time where, you know, the pairing of the book and the person. And then, of course, the fact that I'm in the underground, which, you know, the underground is where all great movements are birthed, in every sense of society. All the great things that we have in life were not mainstream first; they were underground first. All the great advances in our society were first underground, and then came to the surface, and then were adapted by the masses. But I think we're finally starting to see this, right? Like JVN is like rocking whatever the mood of the day brings along. And another person I spoke with, Diana Schlossberg, who is so phenomenal. She's a trans woman, and she changed her name from Jacob to Diana, and she is really inspired by Princess Di. And so she dresses in these fabulous outfits, and, you know, her hair is this like cascading waterfall. And she's, of course, I mean, I say of course because it wasn't a given, but she was reading Orlando by Virginia Woolf, which is about transitioning and becoming yourself. And I think that yeah, in New York, we're in our skin maybe more because we're with each other all the time.
I was gonna say, we're always flexing in New York. It's very different than LA in that way.
Yeah, and I think all of New York is a little bit sad because we thrive and live to be seen, you know, like, and we want to see each other on the street, and we want to walk down the road and say, you look fabulous today, to a stranger. I mean, we do this for each other, and that is really the service that New York City provides, is that it really can see you if you let it, and if you dare to see it too, it can be the most rewarding experience of a lifetime. Yeah, I think just being the person on the outside that you also are on the inside takes practice, though, and I think that clothing definitely can help us with that.
Yes, certainly. It can help you put your best foot forward. I also think just generally, I mean, both fiction and nonfiction are probably the places that a lot of people first have access to alternative ways of dressing anyway. You know, like, I mean, TV, film, sure, but I think also books too, because books are private, you know, and I think in terms of thinking more about like subversive subculture or even sexuality, what would have been considered more subversive, you know, forms of dress, if you can just read that and keep that to yourself, it's a very powerful thing to be able to read sort of different ways of presenting yourself too, in a way that I don't even think about that often. So I want to, I really could talk to you guys for a long time. I want to make sure we ask some of these amazing questions. And I want to just read Elaine's comment because I think it's important. Books can be such a powerful influence that defines society. Oh, and this is now the question. Oh, it's interesting. Hold on. Interesting. It seems our society needs healthy modeling to bring important lifestyles to open our horizons and broaden our perspectives. So Elaine, I'm going to bundle this question so that it can be answered. So I guess this is more for the novel, you know, how do you actually weave self-care into your characters' regimens so that it's something that can be reflected to a reader?
I don't know if there is a lot of self-care in this book. You know, they get into a lot of trouble, and as teens and as adults, there's they get into more trouble. I think by the end of the book, part of the self-care that they do give to one another is just the grace of a friendship, you know. And with a long friendship, I'm sure everyone here knows, it's like those are the people who know you best, but also sometimes, unfortunately, know you the least, because they have this fixed idea of who you were maybe 10 years ago, and you're no longer that person. And that's true for Fiona and Jane too. But by the end of the book, you know, through lots of fights and lots of ebbs and flows of their friendship, I think they managed to find grace for one another and hold space for one another and model for each other how to forgive the people who've harmed them and forgive themselves. So maybe it's not self-care, but friendship love, a deep friendship love as a way, and accepting that as a way of self-care.
And I also think you
sorry,
you just said it, forgiveness is also self-care.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Big time. And I think that a lot of us are need to think about forgiveness from a perspective of the self first and then other people. And I think your characters are dealing with forgiveness in a really interesting and beautiful way.
Marjorie asked a question, and I would like for you both to answer it in a different way. But for Jean, you know, how excited are you about all of the women, minorities, AAPI in particular, and other voices getting platforms as a result of a sort of undeniable social justice reckoning of late? So that's the question for you. And then Uli, I'm curious if you've sort of in your work have noticed a shift in what people are reading as a result of a sort of.
I mean, I think that it's like sort of a double-edged sword, right? So because of, you know, everyone I think at this point has seen the statistics that anti-Asian violence has gone up exponentially in the last year and a half, something like 300% or something, really awful. And part of me is like, wow, that's really sad. And part of me is like, you know, it's probably also because previously incidents were underreported. And how do you even capture that sort of data? So on the one hand, I'm glad that there's awareness brought to Asian Americans and other people of color when it comes to systemic racism in this country. As far as that being the only entree for artists to have a platform, and the idea that we have to capitalize on our trauma to tell a story, is something that I'm not totally comfortable with. And my feeling is that, you know, we've always been here. We've always been telling our stories. I myself have always tried to read women of color, you know, always tried to manage, you know, I was an English major in undergrad and I'm doing a PhD in literature right now. And, you know, of course you can specialize, but you have to familiarize yourself with sort of the Western canon, starting from like Beowulf to Chaucer, Shakespeare, and so on, right? So I've read all those writers, but, you know, I also have made it really an imperative for me to also be versed in Black queer feminist theory as a way to inform my thinking, for example. So yeah, so it's a complicated question, but thank you for asking that. And Uli, have you noticed any change, or is that totally irrelevant?
Yeah, I mean, every there are phases and preferences in reading that are very I'm still thinking about this question, sorry, because it is such a complicated question. And I think that I just want to say that I think what the good thing that we're seeing collectively is that no one should be traumatized and oppressed. I think, period, that's the message that we're getting, right? Is that should not happen to no person, yet it is happening, and at a level that is absolutely horrifying. And I think it's very easy to want to find a silver lining. I think the silver lining does not lie in the changes that we're saying, that we're seeing more authors of color getting a platform. That's the bare minimum that shouldn't even be something that we're discussing, right? The discussion should be around the violence, and the discussion should happen around the violence that is still happening every day. It hasn't lessened just because we're seeing more people of color in the media addressing it. And I think that's the huge discrepancy in terms of what we can't forget what the media does to us, is that it gives us this illusion that we can move on, or that things are solved, or that things at the very least are being addressed. I think there's a huge difference between what the news headlines are and how people's everyday lives are actually playing out. And that is what I see readers addressing. You know, I've seen people reading about identity healing for a really long time, right? 2016, women were reading memoirs by women at an accelerated pace, but that was also because we were starting to get into the Me Too and into horrible sexual harassment truths that have just not been addressed by the media. But just because the media made it the headline doesn't mean that it only happened that year, or that it stopped after all those memoirs came out. We're still being sexually harassed and traumatized. You know what I mean? Like, not to be a downer, but like, we can't forget that media cycles and movement cycles, right? Like, just because 2020 was the year of Black Lives Matter, and now we're not seeing these protests to the same degree anymore, doesn't mean that that has been solved. Just because we see more bestsellers by authors of color doesn't mean that the distribution of opportunity in the literary landscape has been solved. We can't forget that. And I think I thank you for this question, and for I hope that me speaking on it is not, you know, hurting anyone's feelings, or it's not coming across the wrong way. I just really hope that we can continue to question the systems that are in place, and that we can continue to show up in our communities in any way that we can continually. And in terms of what people read on the subway, just to very briefly say it, right now, people want to read about healing. If I could tell you how many braiding sweetgrasses I am seeing on the subway, I would be a rich woman. I'm reading it myself right now, and I'm reading it very slowly because I want to savor it. And I really want to let, like that perspective that is beautiful about the indigenous way of healing and being with nature and being in the world, I want to let that penetrate my body in a meaningful way.
Yeah, a book that I loved in the pandemic that I read in the last years, and I heard a lot of my friends talking about it, is Pleasure Activism, that anthology, which was collected by Adrienne Marie Brown. So that's like also a wonderful, wonderful book on healing. And can I add one thing to what Uli said? You said you hoped that nobody is like offended or hurt by what you have to say. I thought that was an amazing, wonderful speech. And if anybody is offended or hurt by that, maybe they can be and should be. And then they need to question, why am I having such a reaction to what this author is saying? And instead of being like, oh, Uli is wrong, she's just being like politically correct, or whatever, you know, projection people might have, like really sit with why you are offended or feeling strange or uncomfortable, because I don't think there's anything super controversial about what you've just said.
I think, you know, going back, one of the things that you learn from friendship is how to take responsibility for yourself, because if you don't, you won't have any friends. And so, you know, even in reading your collection, and their, you know, Fiona and Jane's relationship specifically, it's like, I feel like the internet is not a place where people feel the need to take responsibility for themselves generally. I mean, I know I'm obviously generalizing, but I do think it's what you're talking about is like, people need to take responsibility for themselves. And part of that is being disappointed and being hurt and being confused. And it's not other people's job to manage that for you. And I'm not saying that in terms of I'm not saying that in a harsh way. I'm saying that I don't think my generation, millennials, were not told that we would survive discomfort. I don't know what happened, but everyone's like, if I feel discomfort, if I feel confused, I'm going to die. And it's just not true, And so I think it is why we have friends to tell us that's the case. It's why we have therapists. Go to a therapist. If you can, and if you can't, let me fight a little more so that more people can go to therapists. But I think that's what you're saying ultimately, Jean, is like, it's okay to remember that you have to take responsibility for yourself. And I think a lot of people would be better off, or I don't know. I don't mean it in a mean way or in a sort of combative way.
Yeah, I think looping back to what we were saying earlier about like women taking on a lot of the nurturing, I think one thing that I don't want to overly generalize is that like, I think we think that, I can be the uncomfortable one and I'm not going to speak up for the sake of everybody else in the room. You know what I mean? But maybe it's time for us to be like, listen, this is how I feel. And if you're uncomfortable with that, check yourself.
Yeah. And just to come from a place of, and that's intimacy, is like coming from a place that the other person can handle themselves,
and trusting that they are also an adult with the mind, and that I'm not going to like sugarcoat things for you, because I love you. And I want you to really like be able to learn and change if that's what you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to, we're like very close to running out of time, which went very fast somehow. And I just want to make sure that I'm seeing everybody's question who asked one that we haven't answered yet. Oh, interesting. Okay. This is a really good question. Essentially, wait, I just want to read. I'm going to ask this question, but I want to read Jessica Weinstein. Jean, is a lot of this? Oh, okay. I'm going to ask Jessica's question because it's specific, and then I'm going to ask a general question, and then we can bow out gently into that good night. So Jean, is a lot of this book written from personal experience or research? You covered a lot of NY lifestyle, even though you live in California. Also, this book covers many deep themes such as suicide, sexuality, and family connections. I'm curious where your inspiration comes from. And Jessica said, I just finished it today, by the way, and loved it. Felt very connected to their friendship and enjoyed the way you chose to write it in smaller, short stories.
Thank you, Jessica. No, it's not based on, like, my dad did not come out to me when I was 18. I did not slap my white girlfriend because she talked shit about my mom. I did not have an affair with my dentist, any of that kind of stuff. These are just sort of plot points in the book if you haven't read the book. So none of that happened, but I've been saying that I share a lot of emotional DNA with these characters because even if the specific details aren't drawn from my own life, the emotions of like fighting with your best friend, loving them so hard, those are real things that I've experienced or observed. So I hope that answers your question.
It's a great answer. Emotional DNA. So the last question I want to ask, because it has to do with, I think, inside time. And again, I appreciate M.M.LaFleur doing this and asking us to be a part of this and giving us clothing, putting clothing on our backs. Mm-hmm. How have the last 2 years changed the way you guys do work, like creative work?
That's a great question for Uli, because have you been still going on the subway?
I have been on the subway. Yeah, I mean, I made a big part of Between the Lines during the pandemic and met a lot of people, at least at the station, if not fully underground. But I think what the pandemic has done to my work in general is to refine me as the storyteller in it, and to ask myself, what is the energy that I'm expanding, and what is the energy that I'm getting back? How am I spending my resources? Because to be honest, they're very scarce for writers these days. If you can support an artist in your community, if you can support a writer in your community, there's so many ways to do it. And I really just want to say that you can subscribe to our newsletters. You can give us a follow. You can give us some likes. You can join our Patreons. You can do so many things for us, some of them financial, some of them non-financial, and they're so deeply needed and appreciated because that support will lead to other things. I just want to put that forth. I'm sure our links will be dropped in the chat and you can just, like come along on these journeys. But it has really made me ask myself, what kind of artist I want to be going forward. And I think that that has been a very tough, but also a very clarifying experience.
Wow. I think for me, I get a lot of inspiration from eavesdropping. I'm very nosy. I love to just go to a cafe or any public place and just like listen to people have arguments or like have intense phone conversations. Here in LA, you'll always hear somebody pitching their fucking pilot or something. So I just love it. I love the intensity and the earnestness. So I definitely missed that in the pandemic. And I feel like I miss the energy of serendipity. And I'm so glad that it's, we're starting to come back a little. I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to eavesdrop again.
I love eavesdropping. And before I talk to anyone on the subway, I observed him and I look for little details about their, like, are they wearing a special pin? What kind of bag do they have? What kind of shoe are they wearing? We love to observe each other. I really think we do. And I think we miss each other. And that's why we're so grateful for these Zoom opportunities so that we at least can have some FaceTime with each other.
Yes, exactly. Well, both of you, please, can you hold up your books again, just so people, if you haven't bought either of these books, please, please, please buy them. I don't know why you haven't bought them yet. And do that at a bookstore or online, wherever books are sold. And I just really appreciate both of you, being a part of this conversation, and Book Club and M.M.LaFleur for facilitating it. I'm going to turn this conversation over to Maria, who has a few little things to say, but thank you guys so much. I really this is a very, very pleasurable for me, intellect wise and just brain wise. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, everyone. This was an amazing conversation. Before everyone jumps off, do have some links to drop in the chat. So first and foremost, the winners of our Libro.fm giveaway, and I will contact you over email, but I'm going to drop your names in the chat. There you go. These are our winners. Congratulations, everybody.
We have Angelica. We have Hannah. We have Lauren.
We have Lauren. There you go. So, woo, yay.
Good prize.
So I will follow up with you over email, and I will actually follow up over email with everyone. So the links I'm about to drop into the chat, don't worry if you miss them. You will get a link in your inbox tomorrow. So just first and foremost, there is a promotion to Book Club that is running. That's 25% off of an annual premium membership. So you can find that at the link there, and I'll send it around tomorrow. And if you would like to purchase any clothes from M.M.LaFleur, and thank you so much to our great panelists for showing off their great style, there's a code for you. And to answer your question around what everyone was wearing earlier, these are the links, and buy everyone's books. And I'll also share social links as a follow. There's a lot coming to you, so don't freak out. It's a lot in the chat. But I wanted to make sure everyone had it in one place. And I think that is it. This has been a fantastic event. Thank you so much, everyone.
I would like to see a capsule collection for reading wear from M.M.LaFleur, so that after you work, you go home and you put on your book clothes.
Yes, your book pants. I think you need book pants.
I'm going to follow up with you, Karah, so we can make that happen. Okay.
I can't do the sketches, but I have ideas.
Okay.
I would like to participate in that too. Like, I can do a reader's edit of what's existing in M.M.LaFleur. Like, this is what you should wear when you're reading.
I just picked my pen up because the reaction was so immediate that I was like, gotta follow up. This is a great idea.
Look, books closed. We love anything. I would purchase. People would. We are an underserved group.
Yeah, I would totally buy books clothes.
We have
books
some
clothes. I like that. It's what do you call that in jam? Books clothes.
We have a few things I think could work, so we'll send around.
Fabulous.
So yeah.
Well, thank you everybody so much. What a fun time this was. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you,
all.
Maria.
See you soon. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.